Hi, I'm Jeremy Kirk with Intel 471, and this is Happy Hunting, which is our guide to threat hunting in your logging systems. With me today is Lee Arkinall, who's Senior Threat Hunt Analyst. Welcome, Lee.
Thanks, Jeremy.
So Lee is going to demo a threat hunt soon here that has been used by adversaries after compromising machines with the Lumma Infostealer. So it involves using the FindStr command on Windows, which is similar to grep, to look for running processes that might be linked to security functions and monitoring. So attackers will use FindStr along with the Tasklist.exe to basically look for anything security-related processes and then potentially shut those down so they don't get caught. Before we get into the threat hunt, I'm going to briefly discuss some background about infostealers and Lumma specifically. So infostealers or information stealers are malware applications that hoover up enormous amounts of data on machines, such as login credentials, cryptocurrency wallets, session tokens, personally identifiable information, basically anything that's stored or transits through a browser. So the malware is spread through phishing campaigns and social engineering, malvertising and SEO campaigns. The data that is stolen from compromised machines often ends up in underground markets where you can buy packages of what they call logs. So these are often just bundles of data from individual machines that are often priced and sorted according to the perceived value of the data. Lumma first appeared on Russian language cybercriminal forums about 3 years ago in 2022, and it became one of the most popular types of information stealers. It was very effective, it was easy to use, and it didn't get picked up usually by security software. Lumma also offered its own bespoke marketplace for people who were running Lumma campaigns could sell that stolen data. And to give a perspective on just the reach of this market, in a 3-month period in early 2024, the market had more than 21,000 listings for logs or batches of data that Lumma had captured. So one way that users get infected with Lumma is after they conduct searches for cracked or pirated software. This is an often used lure over many years. Our analysts have recently observed these types of campaigns. So you search for a piece of software, you come across a search result to a fake piece of software. Once you click on that search result, you end up on a domain that might have a big download now button. Press the download now button. That will lead to a zip archive hosted on a file sharing service where the zip archive might have another zip archive inside it. And if you unwrap all of that, there's an installer that installs the Lumma Infostealer. That's just one of several ways that people can become infected with that. So there has been law enforcement action against Lumma because it was so prevalent. In May 2025, law enforcement, along with other private partners, significantly disrupted Lumma's infrastructure by targeting the command and control servers that are used to communicate with Lumma-infected machines. So more than 2,000 domains were seized or blocked, and authorities also identified almost 400,000 infected computers. After the disruption, Lumma's operators issued an update indicating their belief that law enforcement had probably exploited a vulnerability and then erased some of their disks and a backup server. Lumma also wrote that its domains were taken over and then used to phish its own customers. And so this is one technique that law enforcement may have been able to collect data on Lumma's customers. The FBI also dropped a message on a Telegram channel used by Lumma clients, basically saying all your logs and account information are safe with us. So kind of an effort at deterrence there to kind of spook customers of Lumma. But unfortunately, after this action, new C2 servers were stood up, and it looks like that the Lumma's operators were able to reconstitute a significant part of their infrastructure. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lee, who is going to walk us through the threat hunt. Lee, take it away.
Thank you, Jeremy, for all that wonderful information. So what we're here to do now is to take this intel and make it actionable so you can hunt with it. Now, first off, all this information that I'm bringing up is coming from a malware campaign report that our wonderful intel analyst created. It documented an attack based on Lumma Stealer, and it found IOCs and behaviors. Now, in this report, there are many useful IOCs. We have malicious domains, URLs, and hashes. And if you would suspect that you could be a victim or you're worried about the Lumma Stealer in your environment, you can take these IOCs and conduct what I like to call an IOC scan. So when you're scanning for these indicators of compromise, this could produce a quick win. Normally, again, malicious indicator compromises or IOCs stay malicious unless they're like an IP or a domain that's been compromised. But if it's a malware hash, a file name, and they've been reported included in an attack, there's a good chance that those are going to be malicious anyways. So what I would do is I would take those indicators and conduct a scan 30, 60, 90 days, see what you can find. Now, if you get 0 results, does that mean you're safe? Not necessarily. You could still be compromised just because they changed the indicators of compromise, change the file name or change some code in the malware itself so that it could avoid the detections and the security software. Well, that's where behaviors come in, and that's where we really like to talk about. So focusing on behaviors help us understand how the malware and the threat actor operate, which tend to be more consistent than IOCs since IOCs can change rapidly. So our job as threat hunters is to find these behaviors and create a way that we can hunt for it in a way that stands the passage of time. So looking at the malware campaign report again, the malware analyst found a malicious routine that begins with the creation of a command.exe instance that renames a heavily obfuscated batch script and executes it. The script then conducts an environment check using Tasklist or 2 living off LAMP binaries, Tasklist and FindStr utilities to search for active processes associated with common antivirus software, including the Bitdefender, ESET, QuickHeal, and Sophos products. Now, this behavior would be the thing that we consider consistent. Using those tools quickly together or at the same time or close to the same time could be a behavior or an indicator that someone else is using this technique. But how do we make it actionable? So how can we make this intel actionable? Well, this threat hunt package that was created by our content developers identifies instances where adversaries may use the native Windows Tasklist command in combination with the FindStr utility to locate security-related processes, just how it was reported in the malware campaign report. Adversaries and malware often use this method to search for and target processes associated with security products and other interesting services. By identifying these processes, attackers can attempt to manipulate or disable security mechanisms, gather sensitive information, or facilitate more effective ways to execute based on what processes are discovered. So if we use the hunt package, we can identify the terms that it's looking for. You can see that we're looking at FindStr and Tasklist and looking for the images or the process or child process being Tasklist and FindStr. And what that reveals is that within a short amount of time, we can see that FindStr was looking for the term password in a certain file, and then Tasklist was also executed. So we see both the process command line arguments, we see the processes that are being executed, and who the parent process was. This could be, once again, an indicator of someone who is trying to identify security products in your environment that are running to prevent the adversary from achieving the goals that they're trying to do.
I've got a question for you, Lee.
What's that, Jeremy?
So based on those 2 results, how do you disambiguate those results from, how do you know they're not false positives?
So whenever it comes to false positives, the easiest answer is always to look historically. In this case, the best way to determine if these are false positives is to look at how often this has happened in your environment previously, and then try to get an understanding of how often this should happen. Now, I always use the example of deleting shadow copies. Is that something that is handled by one person, to clean up things, or is that never happening in your environment? In this case, this tends to be a very specific combo that normally isn't, and I will say shouldn't be normally piled together to look inside your environment. I like to think that security professionals or even just technical professionals within their environment, they should know what's going on. They may not need to do this type of behavior to figure out what's running on their machine. They might have other tools that they can tell what services or processes are running in your environment. They may be the administrators of those tools, so they know it's running already. So this kind of discovery behavior in this type of case normally would be considered suspicious or malicious, but there's always that 1 or 2 organizations out there that this is a common practice in. And then that's going to be tougher. That's when you start saying user, roles, responsibilities, how often, computer name, what's the source, dive into that deep end. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes. Can you put the results up again? Sorry, I kind of interrupted you and while you were still doing your bit. I have another question for you, Lee. Looking at the first result there where it's picked up a fine string and in quotations, the string string that someone was looking for had the word password in it. What do you think an attacker was doing specifically with that command?
So looking at these results. So FindStr can be used for many different things, looking for different, any string that exists in a file. In this case, the top result might not be so much looking for security tools, but what this could be looking for is the phrase password living in a document. Now, this could also be used as a way of collecting information. So if they would run like a, more discovery activity and concat things to a file, and they don't want to exfiltrate the file, they wanted to try not to draw some attention. If they have terms that they're looking for, they could run FindStr against that file that they created and see if it does show up. So if they're trying to do this all through like command line or PowerShell without actually having to interact with the desktop or exfiltrate files, they could do things like that. And they could also use regular expression, which may make it even easier for them to get information. So if they're looking for patterns of things instead of a certain string, they could be able to find that and gain some information around that as well.
Great, thank you.
Not a problem. That's a great question. So thank you everyone for joining today's Happy Hunting video. In this episode, we broke down how adversaries are using native Windows tools like FindStr and Tasklist to identify security processes that might interfere with their malware, and showed how a behavior-based hunt can uncover that activity even when specific details change. Now, a big shout out to our malware analyst for putting this report together. It provided a lot of information, not only IOCs, but behaviors that were associated with the threat, and allowing us to talk about it in a way that focuses on both aspects. Because as a blue teamer, conducting IOC scans is important, and threat hunting is important as well. And techniques like this are simple but effective, and they're used across different malware families and threat actors. These aren't only limited to certain malware. So building hunts around these behaviors really helps defenders stay ahead even as tooling evolves. Now, the hunt package we used, Potential Use of FindStr with Tasklist, is linked below. Try it out in your environment, see what you find, and let us know what your threats you want to see next. Until next time, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, malware analyst at Intel 471, and happy hunting.